Welcome to the Daily Plunge. We are looking at the letter to the Hebrews, chapter 11, verses 13 through 22. Now, we're doing the 12 days of Christmas, and we're looking at these passages in light of the incarnation, the birth of Jesus Christ. Now, the thing about chapter 11 of Hebrews is what it's trying to convey is about how God is faithful. And really, we're looking at these passages to see how Christmas is the fruition, the fulfillment of the Old Testament. So as the author of Hebrews talks about living by faith, he talks about starting that right off verse 1. He goes on in verse 13 how all these people were living by faith even when they died, even though they hadn't seen all of their promises come to fruition as they had hoped. They still trusted God. They did not receive what was promised, but they welcomed it from a distance. And it goes on about how they understood that their life in this world was temporary. They were just passing through. They are temporary residents. And they longed for the eternal land that God had promised them, life with Him. And therefore it says God is not ashamed to be their God. Even though the world looked down upon them, even though the world may have seen them as failure, God is not ashamed of them because they had faith. Which begs the question, are you ashamed or are you proud to call on God? As Christians, we should be eager and proud to call upon the Lord. Going on, he talks about how God tested Abraham. God had given him the son that they had longed for. It was the greatest desire they had. And God said, you need to give that to me. And even though it was so hard for Abraham, as it says in verse 19, Abraham knew that God could raise the dead because God had already given life to shriveled up old people, to Abraham and Sarah. And he knew if he could do that, he could raise the dead. He goes, and so that's that test that Abraham goes through. Verse 20, by faith, Isaac blessed Jacob and Esau. But the thing is, the blessing really only goes to Jacob. It's through the line of Jacob that comes the Messiah, right? That's the line, not Esau's. He did bless Esau, but not in the same way. And then he talks about how Jacob, who blesses Joseph's sons. Well, what were Joseph's sons? They were Egyptians. They weren't part of the tribe, really. And yet it's a sign that this promise is going to be for all people, not just the Hebrews. And then Joseph himself speaks that one day there'll be an exodus out of Egypt. And so all of this is the point that we may not always see where God is working, but we are to trust that in the midst of our lives, as big as struggles as they are, that God is true. And so as we look at the fulfillment of the promises in Christ Jesus, what are all the other promises that God will be faithful to? And so the question for us is, the question for you, do you have confidence in God? Do you have faith and assurance of God's promises? You do. It's in the Word. It reminds you again and again, God is true and God is faithful. Well, thanks, friends. Have a blessed day.